Greetings fellow guitar travellers and welcome to another episode of Rock Guitar Fundamentals, all about the craft of playing the guitar. And on this week's episode it's a very important and crucial subject, and one that's often very much misunderstood and neglected by guitar players, rock guitar players everywhere, and that is correct and good and efficient left hand technique. So that's what this lesson is going to be all about. So before we get into the lesson, I'd like to encourage you to head on over to my website, which is www.roundjparker.com, and there's a whole bunch of guitar stuff on that site, most of which is free. There's backing tracks you can download, there's a whole ton of lessons, and there's also a shop where you can buy things if you feel so inclined. I should say also, the website has a facility to subscribe to it. So if you subscribe to the website, then I'll send you lots of additional free content that will not be available anywhere else. I will not be putting it on YouTube or distributing it in any other way. It will be for subscribers only. So very much encourage you to subscribe to the website. Alright, so let's get straight into today's lesson. Rock Guitar Fundamentals, all about developing that left hand. Okay. Let's do it. Okay, well, I've taught guitar for a long time, and one of the recurrent things I see in students when they come for lessons is, ridiculously poor digitation and monstrously inefficient and incorrect fingering. So I've seen things like this, This sort of thing where they don't use all the digits for starters and the hand position is all totally wrong. So I'm going to go over some basic concepts here. The basic concept of what's called position playing, and then also talking about what the digitation should be within position playing, and then actually where your left hand really should be. Okay, so let's begin by looking at position. Okay, well, you've probably heard this before, we're in 3rd position, 5th position, 8th position, 10th position. What does that actually mean? What is a position on the guitar? Well, what a position is a 4-fret span from your index finger to your 4th finger. And position is always determined by the location of your index finger. So for instance, if my index finger is on the 5th fret, then it would be in 5th position, and what that would mean is that the index finger would play anything on fret 5, it would be the 2nd finger's job to play anything on fret 6, the 3rd finger would play something on fret 7, and the pinky, its job would be to play all the notes on fret 8, and that is what a position is. It's also known as 1 finger per fret. Okay, and many of the things that you play on the guitar fall within a 4-fret or 4-span position, and the idea being that you want to avoid unnecessary lateral movement, so you don't want to be playing this sort of thing. So you have a position, 4 frets across, and you can play whatever you're playing in that position without having to move your hands sideways. But the reason this is important is whenever you shift position on the guitar, that is move from one location of the neck to another, it always engenders a certain amount of instability in the left hand, which very often leads to error. So it's fine if you're in one place because you're not having to move the hands sideways, but the minute you need to start moving across the instrument, well, that's where all the problems happen, you see. And one of the things you can do to really reduce this is start playing with good position. Alright? So, that's what a position is. So if you ever come across it again, someone says we're in this position, that's what it means. It's a 4-fret span with your index finger determining which position you're in. I hope that's clear enough. So, let's go on and look at the actual correct left hand position. If you watch many rock guitar players and blues players, you'll probably notice that they quite commonly, habitually play with their thumb over the top of the neck of the guitar. There are various reasons for this, and some of which can be useful. For instance, if you're going to do a lot of string bends, it could be useful to have the thumb over the top of the neck so you can push the fingers against it and act a bit like a fulcrum. However, there are serious problems with having the thumb over the top of the neck of the guitar, because if you try and play anything, and you can try this yourself, you'll notice that if you play anything going down, by the time you reach the D string and then try to go to the A string with your thumb still over the top of the neck of the guitar, it becomes basically impossible. and then if you go to the sixth string, you just cannot stretch your fingers out properly, and you end up with a fairly horrible looking hand position. I call these sorts of players the neck throttlers, you know. Well, you know, that's not really the idea. So the real reason this is inefficient is because that to try and accommodate this fact that your thumb is over the top of the neck, number one, you can't separate your fingers properly. You certainly can't stretch out to anything more than, you know, 3 frets, say. It also means that as you ascend and descend an idea, you actually have to actively alter where your hand is, which seems to me a bit mad that you should be constantly doing that with your left hand. So I'm just going to demonstrate something here. I'm going to play a little chromatic scale, which is 5, 6, 7, 8 across all 6 strings, and I'm going to deliberately leave my thumb where it is and watch what happens to the left hand and especially the left elbow. Alright, have a listen. Now, you should see what happened there. I started off and the elbow was down here, and by the time I got to the high E string it was up there, and the whole hand position was now extremely, I mean you can see this in the camera, but it looks a bit like the claw, doesn't it? It doesn't look too cool, doesn't look very accurate. And so that just seemed to me to be a crazy way of playing, because you know I couldn't stretch my fingers out properly, and I had to alter my hand position as I moved up or down an exercise or a scale or a melody or a riff or whatever it was. And this just seemed to make no sense to me at all. So this is what you should actually do. If we just stick with our little 4-finger exercise just now, okay? If you lay all 4 fingers out on a line on the 6th string, you'll find that to accommodate even this 4-fret span, the thumb needs to go on the back of the neck of the guitar. And it needs to go on the back of the neck round about, you see that, about halfway down the neck and in line with where your 2nd finger would be. So if I were to take the guitar neck away, let's do this for you, take the guitar neck away, we'll have that. The thumb is going to be in line with the 2nd finger, okay? Alright, so as we ascend up through our little exercise, what should actually happen is that the thumb should follow the fingers. So as we move up, the thumb and the whole arm just goes down towards the floor. So you can see that I'm not having to alter the angle of my elbow or forearm or anything like that. I'm just all doing is moving it down. I'm just going to turn around a little bit so you can see the thumb on the back of the neck, and you can see how the thumb is moving, okay? So I'm going to turn my back on you, but just watch the thumb and you can see it from there, right? Well, we'll have a listen. Can you see it moving down the guitar? So at the very top, my thumb is still exactly in line with my 2nd finger, but it's right at the edge of the neck of the guitar. And all I've done is just moved everything like that. So you can see from a technical point of view the absolute advantage of doing it like this, because really you don't have to alter your hand shape at all. The hand can just stay exactly the same shape all the time. And all you're going to do is move everything up and down a little bit, rather than this business of trying to do this, which just seems completely crazy and pointless. So let's look at this little exercise, little chromatic exercise. Very simple. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the digitation, by the way, the fingering across all 6 strings. And we can use this as a little vehicle for developing this sort of positional thing. Now also you probably noticed the way that I'm sitting is I've got the guitar elevated, and I'm actually sitting with the guitar on my left leg rather than my right leg. I mean, I know the conventional way to sit with an electric guitar is like this. For me, I find if I sit like that, then I'm kind of hunching over the guitar, and it's really not good for my back or for my shoulders. And I also find that my left hand, I just can't get the sorts of spans that I like to be able to use. So I sit somewhat like a classical guitar player would sit, but don't think for a second that, well, that means you've got to play classical guitar, or this guy must be a classical player and that's why he sits like this. Well, the truth is I have played some classical guitar, but I learned to play classical guitar well after I learned to play rock guitar, and I've actually pretty much always sat with the guitar this way, because it just seems to me to be the most efficient and comfortable way to sit. And it also gives us the greatest scope in terms of you know, playing with good digitation and good technical facility without straining the left hand too much. All right, so I think you can see that's the sort of the principal idea behind keeping the thumb behind the back of the neck. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to show you a few other little things where we can really start to exploit the fact that our thumb remains on the back of the neck and doesn't move up. All right, so let's look at that. Right, before we get into the examples, I've got a couple more things to cover relating to correct left hand positioning and correct left hand technique. And here's the first thing, and that is just where you should fret in the fret. A lot of my students have a problem with fretting in that they don't produce clear notes. They either get a fret buzz or they just get a thoroughly unclear muted note. And the reason for this is they're just fretting in the incorrect part of the fret. So, for instance, if you're playing fret 5, your finger, whichever finger it is, in this case the index finger, it should be right at the edge of the fret, behind the fret wire, adjacent to fret 6. So I think you can see that quite clearly on the video, but the finger needs to be right at the edge, okay? Because if you move it back just a little bit, listen. Yeah, it's starting to buzz now, and if I move it right to the opposite end of the fret, listen, you can't hear anything. So the reason for having it at the edge of the fret is that, number one, you will not need to press down so hard, okay? Because if your fingers are right at the edges of the frets, you only need to use the minimum amount of force or effort to get the note to engage and come out clearly. So, for instance, if I use this much pressure here, and you can hear the note is engaging, and we can actually hear a clear tone. If I just move back slightly, use the same level of pressure, listen. You hear it starting to get a bit buzzy. And I'll use the same level of pressure at the back fret, listen. Doesn't engage. So this is there to prevent you from actually pressing down too hard, because if you press down too hard, all you're going to do is tire out your left hand more quickly than it would otherwise tire out. And also it probably means that when you're playing, you're going to be a lot more tense than you need to be. So every finger should be right at the edge of the fret. That isn't such a problem for your first and second fingers, but you might find, especially in say first position, that the third finger is somewhat reluctant to get right at the edge of the fret. And this is another good reason why the thumb needs to be behind the neck of the guitar, because if you tip your thumb up and then try it, you'll find that the fingers just won't be able to make that sort of span. They'll be in the wrong place. So that's a big issue for a lot of students. You've got to fret right at the edge of the fret, and then you'll have to press down a lot less hard, and you'll be able to play with a much cleaner sort of tone. So that's one thing to be watch out for. Another thing to watch out for is really just what you might call excessive movement of the left hand. If you watch a beginner play, they make huge movements, you know, this sort of thing, gigantic finger movements. Whereas if you watch a very sort of you know, experienced player play, especially these quick rock players, the motion in the left hand seems so minimal it hardly looks like they're moving at all. And if you think about it from an economy of motion point of view, this makes absolute sense. That if you have big, you know, wide, ungainly motions, well, number one, you can't get those very fast, and number two, they're quite likely to be inaccurate in that, you know, if you have putting your finger down from say this height, then the chance of it going to the right fret and the right string are probably quite slim. All right. So you don't want to do that. You want to keep your fingers close to the edge of the frets, which also brings me on to one of the next things, and that is what part of the finger you should actually use to fret. Again, if you watch players with poor technique, they often fret with the pad of their finger like this. You see this sort of thing, fingers are all flat like this. Well, they shouldn't be like that. The finger should bend at both joints, and you should fret with the fingertips. So the tips of the fingers only, alright? Do not use the pad because it's clunky and it leads to loss of control in the left hand, as you can clearly see. The way I'm playing right now, it looks horrible, doesn't it? Yeah, but I'm sure you know players that play like this, and you know, if you're honest with yourself, you may even play like this yourself. Well, you don't want to play this way. You want to play with good efficiency and good control. So far, don't allow the fingers to move too much above the frets, and also fret with the fingertips. Alright, now there is one other thing we need to cover which is very important, and it's a rule called fingers down ascending. And again, this is all to do with efficiency of playing. Again, a lot of my students, if they were to play an exercise like this, what they might do is this. You see what happens? They're lifting their fingers off just after they've played, you know, the next note. Well, you shouldn't do that. And the reasons are as follows. If you're going to play these 4 notes, if you think about how many motions that actually is, the index finger's already down, second finger goes down, third finger goes down, pinky goes down, that's just three motions, right? 3 finger motions. If you do this, well, how many motions is that? See, that's 1 finger down, 1 finger off, that's 2 motions. Then again, 1 finger down, 1 finger off, that's 4 motions, and then 1 finger down, 1 finger off, that's 6 motions, right? So think about it from this point of view. To play these 4 notes, do you want to move your fingers 3 times or 6 times? What makes the most sense? What's the most efficient? Well, it's an obvious no-brainer. 3 motions is going to be easier to do than 6. The other consequences of lifting your fingers off is that everything will tend to separate and sound staccato like this. It won't sound truly legato. So the next thing you need to really consider is this fingers down ascending. And what that really means is, if I play 4 notes, these 4 notes, when the pinky goes down, all 4 fingers are now down on the string in a line, and they remain there until we go to the next string, and then we can move everything, but not before, okay? Now, again, one of the things that my students often do is the first 3 are okay, and as soon as they put the pinky down, boom, index finger or second finger as well lifts off the string. You've got to really discipline yourself to ensure that doesn't happen, and you leave all the fingers down until you go to the next string, and that will make your playing as efficient as it possibly can be, and you'll be able to whiz up and down these scales and exercises. So although a lot of these concepts are to do with how to play quicker, it's not just for speed, it's for accuracy and articulation and control. So one of the byproducts of this is you might end up being able to play very fast if you want to, but the main reason for playing with control technique is that you will play things accurately, and it won't be hard to play things, because I often watch players play and their technique isn't very good, and you can see that because their technique is not very good, they are severely limited in what they can play. They probably like to be able to play better, but their technique just precludes them from doing that. And you just don't want to be technically limited in music. You want to get your technique to advance as far as it can, so that you can play what you want to play. So I hope that's clear enough. So we're going to move to some exercises for the left hand now, which will just demonstrate this technique that we've been talking about and help to develop the left hand span. Alright, so let's do that. Okay, I'm going to show you a couple of little patterns that you can practice to help you develop this thumb behind the neck idea, and also help you develop the span. Because as I said before, one of the very limiting things about having the thumb over the top of the neck is it just severely limits any sort of span you can do. Even on the high E string with the thumb over the top of the neck like this, I can do 3 frets, but 4 is extremely difficult, and 5, forget it. There's just no way, because you cannot stretch your fingers out if your hand is this shape. However, if you change it to this shape, then you can stretch your hands and your fingers out tremendously. So I'll just demonstrate something you can try to really get this monster stretch together. And this is a sort of weird wide interval chord. So it's this chord. You see that? And in this chord, the first finger is on low E3, the second finger is on A5, the third finger is on D7, and the pinky is on G9. Now, when I show this to students, they just go, "No way, man. How can you play that?" Well, the reality is I can just play it and no more. But the point is I can play it. And that's because the thumb is reached right down the back of the neck of the guitar, and the hand is opened right out. And as you can see, imagine trying to do it like this, thumb over the top of the neck. Forget it. You're never going to do it. Ever. Never in a million years. So if you want to do those cool wide stretches, you've got to get the thumb down the neck. So let's get to this first little example. This will also help you develop legato and tie in with the next episode. So we're going to do a little nonsensical pattern across all 6 strings, okay? So starting on fret 5, we're going to go fret 5, 7 and 9. And we're going to play this pattern across all 6 strings. So it's not a proper scale, it's just a nonsense pattern really. And the fingering throughout is going to be fingers 1, 2 and 4. Now this sort of 5 fret spread or wide stretch is incredibly common, especially if you play any sort of 3 note per string scales. But if you're one of these thumb over the top of the neck sort of guys, then that 3 note per string 5 fret stretch is going to seem extremely hard. So you've got to bring that thumb down and let the fingers move with the thumb across the guitar, this sort of motion. So let me just demonstrate that then, let's have a listen. I'm playing this all legato, so picking the first note and hammering the other 2, another descent, picking the first note, pulling the other 2. So it sounds like this. I'm sure you get the idea, standard legato thing. But you can see that it would be really quite impossible to play this with the thumb over the top of the neck, and you certainly could not adjust. I mean, I'll just demonstrate trying to adjust and you'll see what I mean. It's incredibly clumsy looking and it just doesn't articulate properly, so much more sensible to keep the hand in one place with one shape and not have to do this business. And let's show you one other sort of idea based again on wide stretches and the sort of things that you'll be able to play if you get these wide stretches together. So let's listen to that. So here's another wide stretch idea, which again I've shown in a couple of my other videos. It's a little diminished arpeggio, right? So here's a little parallel diminished thing. It's 9, 12 and 15 and the fingering is 1, 2 and 4 again. Now this is quite a wide stretch for the left hand. Again, there's no way you could do it with the thumb up here, it's just impossible. So we just play this parallel across all 6 strings, we'll get this. Sort of nonsensical diminished thing. Does sound pretty epic though. Yeah, very cool. Awesome. So, anything that you can practice that has a wide stretch is going to force your thumb onto the back of the neck of the guitar and keep the hand opened out and keep all the fingers parallel to each other as they move will really benefit you. And I promise that if you work on this, and try and really incorporate into your technique, you'll find that you'll be able to play things that you would previously have thought were impossible to play much, much easier. And certainly if you look at any of the lessons on the YouTube channel that feature any of these wide stretches, you're just not going to be able to do them if you have your thumb up here. You just won't, trust me. So that's another reason for getting together. So you want to play those monster chops, and let's be honest, it does look quite a bit cooler, does it not, as well? You see when you see the fingers flying about all over the place and the hands all spread out? It's true that classical guitar players do tend to play this way, and it is a classically influenced sort of idea, I suppose, but the reason that they play that sort of way is because they're very much into finding the best and most efficient way of playing the instrument, and I have to tell you, well, basically this is it. Now I know that some of you might be going, but I play the guitar this way and this is just for the way that you play. And of course, I'm not telling you that you have to play this way. If you've got things happening with your thumb over the top of the neck and everything's working for you, that's fantastic, that's great. But I think for the majority of players who are trying to play some of this more technical material and they're struggling with it and they're finding it hard to do, then really the only solution for them is to adopt a much more efficient and accurate left hand technique. And to be honest, this is it. So that really concludes this lesson. It's not really a playing lesson, this one, it's more a sort of this is how you do things rather than this is what to play. So I don't really have anything else to say on the subject, but we will be carrying these ideas forward in the next episode, where we're really going to try and develop this left hand and develop for you all a fairly monster left hand. So if you want to do all those crazy legato runs that you see all these amazing players do, then yeah, we're going to show you how to do that. Alright, well, that's the lesson. Before I go, I would just like you to head on over to our website and you can check out all the stuff there. And remember to subscribe. If you want to get in touch with me otherwise, then you can find me on Twitter at Rowan J Parker. I'm also on SoundCloud at Rowan-Parker. Let's see now, I'm on Facebook, and the Facebook page is Rowan J Parker. And what else? We're on YouTube as well, of course, because you're watching YouTube and the channel is Round J Parker. So you should be able to find me if you want to get in contact with me and just whatever, drop me a line, and I'll be delighted to hear from you. Alright, well that's the end of this episode of Rock Guitar Fundamentals. Hope you've enjoyed it very much, and I'll catch you next time where we're really going to start leveraging these ideas and develop some monster legato chops. Alright, Round J Parker signing off. Farewell.